The Hitokiri, the Manslayer. Being one of the most aggressive heavies in the game, the samurai brings a relentless quantity of tools to rain pressure and fear over its opponents. I can see why you'd want to play the Executioner. If you came here for some edge, then you're gonna get it, on both blade and tone. My name is EternalCookie, and welcome to the complete Hitokiri guide. Every hero in For Honor has light and heavy attacks, but it's the properties they contain that determine a character's uniqueness. The Hitokiri's entire fighting style revolves around a state known as Mugen Ryu, where the character is enabled to access a variety of different moves. I'll go into depth as to what those moves are and how they work later in the guide, but as of now, it's important to know that the state can be entered through any heavy or light attack, aside from the light and heavy finishers. Unlike most characters, the Hitokiri has no set 2 to 3 hit chains. Instead, it has an endless heavy chain known as the Endless Myriad. This can be entered through initiating with both neutral light or heavy attacks. The neutral light is known as Naikai, and the neutral heavy is known as Mangetsu. Each standard heavy in this chain deals 30 damage, can all be feinted, and can have variable parry timings applied to them. This can be done by holding down the heavy attack button for longer than you usually would. The longer you hold down the heavy attack button before the attack becomes unblockable, the more stretched out the parry time becomes, keeping your opponent guessing. Endless Myriad can end with 2 unique chain finishers. The first is a light attack finisher known as Maikai Rift. It is a lunging attack that has the Hyper-Armour property applied to it, which means it cannot be interrupted by anything aside from unblockable bashes. It deals the same amount of damage as a neutral light attack, which is 18 damage, and should be used at a reasonable rate. Not too much, but not at a rate where you're just not throwing it out at all. The other chain finisher is an unblockable heavy attack known as Mangetsu Rift, performed by holding down the heavy attack button until the attack turns unblockable. This attack has Hyper-Armour, and as the name goes, cannot be blocked. It deals 40 damage and can be accessed through any heavy attack in the Endless Myriad chain, including the first heavy attack. The unblockable can be accessed through a neutral heavy, and can be feinted even when it transitions into its unblockable state. Use both finishers to essentially keep your opponent on their toes, but the light finisher is for when you think you will catch them off guard with it, and the heavy finisher is for when you want to force a reaction from them. As with all characters, the new Hitokiri has a zone attack, which is performed by pressing the light and heavy attack buttons at the same time. It comes out from the left guard at a decent speed and deals a somewhat universal 20 damage. The attack has no mix-up and should be used sparingly, as it takes up around half your stamina, deals 20 damage, has no mix-up, and is an easy parry in higher level play. Most zone attacks are designed to clear out minions in 4v4 modes, so it of course has some use from a neutral stance. The Hitokiri also has a sprint attack, which is performed by pressing the heavy attack button while sprinting towards your opponent. It always comes from the right guard and deals a decent 30 damage. All heavies in the Hitokiri's kit deal 30 damage, apart from Mangetsu Rift, the unblockable form. Sprint attacks across the board are usually predictable and should not be used to initiate your opponent often. But, to be honest, I'd still do it for the little twirl he does. Sankotsu, the Hitokiri's leaping attack, performed by pressing the dodge forward button and the heavy attack button. The function of this move is to catch your opponent attempting to roll away from your mix-ups. It essentially works, but you have to anticipate and predict your opponent's roll for it to be viable in that regard. The attack cannot be feinted and is an easy parry from a neutral standpoint. However, there is a little technique that may decrease the rate at which the attack gets parried, considering you use it sparingly. delaying. The window of when the forward dodge transitions into the heavy attack is quite large. When you lengthen the time of the inputs between the dodge button and the heavy button, the attack itself is considered delayed. This will make the attack seem faster than it actually is and may surprise your opponent. You're ultimately dodging right into their face first, and then performing the leaping heavy attack, instead of travelling to your opponent through the heavy attack itself, which would be anticipated. As we have covered earlier in this guide, Mangetsu Rift is an unblockable heavy attack that can be performed by holding down the heavy attack button with any of the Hitokiri's chained heavies. That's not the only unblockable attack or mix-up the character harnesses. First, we'll cover the lei kick. The lei kick is an unblockable bash that can be performed by pressing or for a short time holding the guard break button during Mugen Ryu. This means that the kick can be accessed through any neutral light attack or chained heavy attack. A successful kick will guarantee an uncharged heavy attack, 30 damage, which is still considered to be a part of the Mugen Ryu state, which means you can immediately follow up with another kick if you wanted to. This attack also has somewhat variable timings. Tapping the guard break button will perform the kick almost immediately after the previous attack, whereas if you hold down the guard break button for a small amount of time, this will occur later than usual. Your opponent will attempt to dodge this attack, which is where the next unblockable comes in. Lei Sweep, performed by holding down the guard break button for a moderate amount of time during Mugen Ryu, basically after any neutral light attack or chained heavy attack. This attack stumbles your opponent and guarantees a neutral light attack, which initiates Mugen Ryu, meaning you can follow it up with another sweep or a kick if you wanted to. Since it has a later timing than the kick, the sweep will catch those attempting to dodge the kick. More often than not, this attack lands. What differentiates this attack from the kick is that it has Hyper-Armour, meaning that not even dodge attacks can escape if they initiate it too early. Both of these attacks share the same startup animation, and both can accordingly be feinted. In most situations, you'd want to follow up a lei kick or sweep feint with a guard break in order to catch your opponent's dodge. You can feint the attacks anytime during their shared startup animations. First, we'll cover the basic punishes. Off the successful guard break, Hitokiri can get an uncharged heavy attack from any direction and enter their mix-ups. Off of a heavy parry, Hitokiri can get a guaranteed light attack which initiates their mix-ups or a guaranteed zone attack, which deals a bit more direct damage. Off of a light parry, the Hitokiri can get a guaranteed uncharged heavy attack from any direction. In For Honor, there are two different types of out of stamina punishes. One where you throw your opponent whilst they are out of stamina, and another where you parry them whilst they are out of stamina. Both situations will result in your opponent falling over. The Hitokiri can get two guaranteed uncharged heavies off of both scenarios. However, with the throw you must either throw your opponent forwards or backwards to get the max punish, as any throw to the side will make the first heavy whiff or not fulfill the full punish. After administering the guaranteed punish, the Hitokiri is very effective at maintaining pressure that aims to force a reaction. After a heavy into heavy punish, the Hitokiri can immediately flow into an unblockable Mangetsu Rift. There are two courses of action you can take with the attack. You can feint it and bait a parry attempt, where you can parry your opponent and rinse and repeat. You can also feint the unblockable into a guard break to catch a parry or dodge attempt. If you believe your opponent anticipates you cancelling the unblockable, by all means, let it fly. A decent 40 damage on top of your guaranteed punish. Another way to keep the pressure on your opponent after punishing them with a heavy is to get into your relay kick or sweep mix-ups. You have 3 courses of action from doing this. Follow up with a kick, follow up with a sweep, or feint the start of animation into a guard break to catch your opponent's dodge. The Hitokiri is an aggressive heavy. A majority of their damage will be dealt through onslaughts of variable heavy timings, unblockable kicks, and relentless trading with the character's Hyper-Armour. Due to its aggression, the Hitokiri has a reliable source of stamina that depletes at an easy and reasonable rate, emphasizing the character's purpose. The demon of a samurai is meant to be an executioner, an ideology that shows through the character's moveset, consisting of many heavy attacks that will grant you an execution on kill. Lack of counter-attacking abilities propels this playstyle of the average Hitokiri player to be aggressive in order to deal damage to their opponent, which is, as clarified, intended. Should the Hitokiri be defensive at all? Of course. As with all characters, a somewhat ultimate balance between offense and defense is always healthy. The Hitokiri has no unblockable opener that guarantees an entry into the character's mix-ups. The demon's mix-ups are entered through first initiating with a light or a heavy attack. Anything thrown out from a neutral stance has a risk to it being countered, but not when it is guaranteed from countering an opponent's attack first, such as parrying. Once the Hitokiri has parried an opponent and administered either a light or heavy attack, that is when the onslaught of attacks should begin, in order to unlock the character's full potential when being defensive. One of the most valuable techniques with this character is what I call the backstep light. Keep in mind that this can also be done with a heavy attack. As you're required to initiate with a light or heavy attack to enter your mix-ups, it's the priority as a Hitokiri player to remain careful when throwing out neutral attacks. Backstepping is a safe, easy way to get into your mix-ups. Instead of normally throwing out a light or heavy attack directly at your opponent, instead move backwards on the analog stick or the S key on PC whilst initiating with the attack. This will cause the Hitokiri to move backwards away from the opponent, out of parry range, and be able to get into the mix-ups from the whiffed attack. This particular type of attack can be incorporated into many different mix-ups to catch your opponent out, especially the backstep light. What I like to do is a backstep light into a feinted mangetsu lift, into another backstep light, into the lei kick and sweep mix-ups. Just be sure to watch your stamina. You could also do a backstep light into a light finisher to catch your opponent off guard. Another mix-up I like to do is a light opener into a feinted lei kick or sweep into a feinted or unfeinted mangetsu lift. Since your opponent will most likely be focused on avoiding a lei kick or sweep mix-up, throwing in an unblockable heavy into the mix will confuse him. The Hyper-Armour attack would also come very handy in whatever mix-up you use. Delaying, a technique I applied earlier to the Sankotsu attack, can also be applied to the Hitokiri's light attacks. Creating more of a time gap between inputting chain attacks can make the follow-up attack seem faster, and this is most effective with the Hitokiri's light attacks. Backstep light to avoid getting parried, and then perform a delayed light finisher to catch your opponent off guard. My favorite mix-up that I found so far is for applying extreme pressure on an out of stamina opponent. The mix-up consists of a backstep light or heavy into a lei kick, into a feinted or unfeinted mangetsu lift. Many players will panic as they would expect you to just take the guaranteed 30 damage off the kick, and the unfamiliarity of the unblockable heavy after the kick will grant you an undeniable advantage over your opponent. As always, if you believe your opponent will anticipate you feinting the unblockable, let it fly. Moving on to a more technical side of the Hitokiri's character design, you must be careful of higher level players parry baiting you. The uncharged heavy a Hitokiri performs comes out fast and is difficult to feint. Aware players will use this to their advantage and feint heavies often, meaning any parry attempts you might make as a Hitokiri will come out as fast heavy attacks that will be difficult to feint, as you likely will have committed to the parry with a fast tap of the heavy attack button. This will make for an easy parry for your opponent. A way to get around this is to make a habit of holding down the heavy attack button for a longer period of time when committing to a parry. This would lengthen the duration of the heavy attack and give you enough time to feint it. Another thing to keep in mind that is kinda random is how heavy feints into light attacks do not track dodges. I know that the common mix-up with characters that have an unblockable heavy attack is to feint it into a light attack if they attempt to parry or dodge the unblockable. However, this is not the case with the Hitokiri, as opponents will also be able to avoid the light attack if they are aiming to dodge the unblockable heavy. Just something to keep in mind, as I found this somewhat odd and worth noting for you all. Keep in mind that this character has a wide range of offensive capabilities to apply to your mix-ups. The mix-ups that I have noted in this tactics section are not the concrete ways of how to play the hero. Experiment, find what works for you, and master all the ways of doing it. Now that I've explained the ins and outs of the Hitokiri, it's now up to you, the player, to develop and master your own skills with the character. Fortunately, there's no one way to play the executioners, despite them having a fundamentally simple moveset. Nevertheless, I expect to see a lot more heads rolling after I upload this. Hope you're all able to take something away from this guide, be it a certain mix-up or technique you didn't know about, and if there was anything important that I missed, then be sure to check out the comment section, as I may leave some further tips down there for you in the future. But if you did learn something new, then consider subscribing for more future content. Anyways, thank you all so much for watching. Have a good one, guys.